We have been studying about our history of English literature, and in today's video, we have reached in Romanticism. So today we will try to talk in detail about Romanticism and how it started, when it started, and who were the prominent writers, poets, and dramatists of that time, and what are the features of this period. That all thing we will try to discuss. Let's begin. So Romanticism, it is one of the most important periods in English literature, and it started in 1798, and it was believed to be ended in 1837. So what is Romanticism? Romanticism, it is not what we generally believe. Romanticism doesn't mean that if someone in love and he is trying to write some things about someone, about the love and beauty, so that will not be called as Romanticism. Now, Romanticism, it is an artistic, literary, and intellectual movement that originated in Europe toward the end of the 18th century. And Romanticism, it arrived later in other parts of the English-speaking world too. Got it? And this is the man, William Blake. He is considered as one of the early proponents of Romanticism. The Romantic period, it was one of major social change in England and Wales because of the depopulation of the countryside and the rapid development of overcrowded industrial cities that took place in the period roughly between 1750 and 1850. And the movement of so many people in England was the consequence of two forces: the agricultural revolution that involved the enclosure of the land, drove workers off the land, and the industrial revolution which provided them employment. So actually, the Romantic poets, they did not write romantic love poems. Okay, actually they were repulsed by the progress of industrial world. So they hated industrial world. So therefore they returned to nature. They tried to find inner peace and the beauty of nature. They don't want to exploit nature for the use of human being. Okay, to make commodities, to make products out of nature. They did not try to do that. Okay, and I request you to go through industrial revolution history and agricultural revolution history in England to know better about the romantic literatures or the romantic works in English literature. And Romanticism, it may be seen in part as a reaction to the industrial revolution. So they did not like industrial revolution, one who wrote literary works in romantic period. And though it was also a revolt against aristocratic social and political norms of the age of enlightenment, as well as reaction against the scientific rationalization of nature. The French Revolution, it was an especially important influence on the political thinking of many of the romantic poets. The landscape is often prominent in the poetry of this romantic period, so much so that the romantics, especially perhaps Wordsworth, William Wordsworth, are often described as nature poets. However, the longer romantic nature poems have a wider concern because they are usually meditations on an emotional problem or personal crisis. So here you will, in the works of romantic poetry, you will not get any kind of social dilemma, social crisis, or the country is in very pain due to economic crisis. Here you will only get some emotional or personal crisis or problem that is poignantly depicted by the writers of this age. Now, if we talk about romantic poetry, then Robert Burns, he was born in 1759 and died in 1796. He was actually a pioneer of the romantic movement, and after his death, he became a cultural icon in Scotland. And apart from him, the poet, painter, and printmaker William Blake. William Blake, he was born in 1757 and died in 1827. He was another figure of early romantic poets that I have already told you. And though William Blake was generally unrecognized during his lifetime, but now he is considered a seminal figure in the history of both the poetry and visual arts of the Romantic age. And among his most important works are Songs of Innocence that was published in 1789, and another work is Songs of Experience that was published in 1794. So here I would like to appeal you that please go through the work of William Blake and try to know about his autobiography or his biography, William Blake and Robert Burns, and many questions are often asked from this part. Okay, and these two great works are notable works. So works of William Blake, Songs of Innocence and Songs of Experience, it was a profound and difficult proficiencies, okay, of that time. And Jerusalem, the emanation of giant Albion, this is also published by him. And after Blake, among the earliest romantics were the Lake poets. Now, this is a very important question. Many questions are already asked about the Lake poets. So I request you, all of you, to please go through in detail about the Lake poets, who are the Lake poets and what kind of things they have done and what kind of poetry they had created. That all thing. If you talk about Lake poets, then in Lake poets, William Wordsworth and Samuel Taylor Coleridge, Robert Southey, and Thomas De Quincey, these were the poet who had utterly in the connection with these Lake poets. Okay, and at the time, Walter Scott, he was also a famous poet of this romantic age. And in 1784, with elegiac, if I'm not wrong, sonnets, Charlotte Smith reintroduced the sonnet to English literature. Okay, this is also another figure of this age, Charlotte Smith. And the early romantic poets brought a new emotionalism and introspection, and their emergence is marked by the first romantic manifesto in English literature that is called the Preface to Lyrical Ballads, that was published in 1789. You must know about the Lyrical Ballads, how it was introduced, who had written it, what kind of history is related with the Lyrical Ballads. So please go through it. Many questions will be asked from this section also. And the poem in lyrical balance, these were mostly by William Wordsworth, though Coleridge had contributed Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner. You might have heard this poem, Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner. And among Wordsworth's most important poems, there are notable works like Lines Composed a Few Miles Above Tintern Abbey, Resolution and Independence, Ode, Intimations of Immortality from Recollections of Early Childhood, and the autobiographical epic, The Prelude. So questions often come that what is the autobiographical work written by William Wordsworth? And you have to say The Prelude. Okay. And another major poet of this time was Robert Southey. He was born in 1774 and died in 1843. He was another of the so-called lake poets, and he was also a poet laureate for 30 years. And although his fame has been long eclipsed by William Wordsworth and Samuel Taylor Coleridge, but Thomas Dickman, but he had done what he could at the time to be a romantic poet. And another literary figure, Thomas Dickens, he was born in 1785 and died in 1859. He is best known for his Confessions of an English Opium Eater that was published in 1821. Please go through it also. And essays of this time was William Hazlitt. He was born in 1778 and died in 1830. He was also a friend of both Coleridge and Wordsworth, and he is best known today for his literary criticism of the time, especially characters of Shakespeare's plays 1817 and 1818. Now, if you talk about second generation romantic poets, then Lord Byron is another name here. If you don't know about him, please go through his biography, his literary works, then only you will know him better. And from his life and works, to many questions are often repeated in the exams. And the second generation of romantic poets, it includes like Lord Byron. I have already told you he was born in 1788 and died in 1824. And then it comes Percy Bysshe Shelley. He was born in 1792 and died in 1822. And then another poet is Felicia Hemans. He was born in 1793 and 1835. And then John Keats. John Keats, we all know about him. So he is the poet of the poem that is called A Thing of Beauty is Joy Forever, right? And he was also born in 1795 and 1821. So they are considered as a second generation English romantic poets. And they have contributed immensely to enrich English romantic poems or English literary works. And Lord Byron, however, he was also still influenced by 18th century satirists and was perhaps the best romantic of three, preferring the brilliant wit of Pope to what he called the wrong poetical system of his romantic contemporaries. Then Byron had also achieved enormous fame and influence throughout Europe, and Goethe called Byron undoubtedly the greatest genius of our century. Then now let's try to know about P.B. Shelley or Percy Bysshe Shelley. He is perhaps best known for Ode to the West Wind, to a Skylark, and Adonais. So please go through his works also. And an elegy written on the death of John Keats, and his close circle of admirers included the most progressive thinkers of the time. A work like Queen Mab 1813 reveals Shelley as the direct heir to the French and British revolutionary intellectuals of the 1790s. And P.B. Shelley became an idol of the next 3 or 4 generations of poems, including important Victorian and pre-Raphaelite poets such as Robert Browning and Dante Gabriel Rossetti, as well as later W.B.S. So please go through about the pre-Raphaelite poets. Then, though John Keats, he shared Byron and Shelley's radical politics. His best poetry is not political, but is especially noted for its sensuous magic and imagery, along with a concern with material beauty and transience of life. Among his most famous works are Ode to a Nightingale, and you must have read this story. And if you have not, please go through in detail. If you have time, and Ode on a Grecian Urn and to Autumn. And John Keats has always been regarded as a major romantic poet of his time, and his stature as a poet has grown steadily through all the changes of fashion. Then, although speaking to his friends, Felicia Hemans began a process of undermining the romantic tradition, a deconstruction that was continued by Letitia, if I'm wrong, I'm sorry, Letitia Elizabeth London, as an urban poet deeply attentive to themes of decay and decomposition. London's novel forms of metrical romance and dramatic monologue were such copied and contributed of her long-lasting influence on Victorian poetry. Now, what is that dramatic monologue? Please go through it. I don't want to talk here. If you talk about other poets of romantic age, then another important poet in this period was John Clare. Please go through his work. Also, he was born in 1793 and died in 1864. He is the son of farm laborer who came to be known for his celebratory representation of English countryside and his lamentation of the changes taking place in rural England. His poetry has undergone major re-evaluation, and he is often now considered to be the most important 19th century poets. Then another major poet, George Crabbe. He was also an English poet who, during the Romantic period, wrote closely observed realistic portraits of rural life in the heroic couplets of Augustan age. Modern critic Frank Whitehead has said that Crabbe, in his verse tales in particular, is an important, indeed a major poet whose work has been and still is seriously undervalued. If you talk about romantic novel in Romantic age, then one of the most popular novelists of this era was Sir Walter Scott. If you don't know about him, please go through his work and biography also, whose his historical romances inspired a generation of painters, composers, and writers throughout Europe. And Scott's novel writing career was launched in 1814 with Waverley. Please remember this, and often his novel are called as historical novel. So this is an illustration, The Last of the Mohicans, illustration from 1896 edition by J.T. Merrill. Please have a look. Okay, this you will get from the Wikipedia, and this is a PDF of Wikipedia itself. And Jane Austen's works critique the novels of sensibility of the second half of the 18th century and are a part of the transition to 19th century realism. Her plots in novels such as Pride and Prejudice 1813 and Emma 1815, though fundamentally comic, highlighted the dependence of women on marriage to secure social standing and economic security. So if you don't know about Jane Austen, you have to know, you must know. I think most of you already know, but still, if you don't know about her life and about her contribution in English novels during the Romantic age, please go through it, try to know her works. And another famous personality of this time of Romantic age was Mary Shelley. Mary Shelley was born in 1797 and died in 1851. She is remembered as the author of Frankenstein that was published in 1818. So this novel Frankenstein is considered as the first science fiction in English, English literature. So you have to know about this novel also. Please go through it if you haven't. Now, if you talk about Romanticism in America, then the European Romantic movement, it reached America in the early 19th century. American Romanticism, it was just as multifaceted and individualistic as it was in Europe. Like the Europeans, the American Romantics demonstrated a high level of moral enthusiasm, commitment to individualism, and the unfolding of the self, and emphasis on intuitive perception and the assumption that the natural world was inherently good while human society was corrupt. So there are some writers who had wrote immensely in these themes of Romanticism, like Romantic Gothic literature. It made an early appearance with Washington Irving's The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. It was published in 1820, and Rip Van Winkle. It was published in 1819. So there are some picturesque local color elements in Washington Irving's essays, and especially his travel books. From 1823, the prolific and popular novelist James Fenimore Cooper, he had begun publishing the historical romances of frontier and Indian life. However, Edgar Allan Poe, if you don't know about him, please go through his biography and literary works and read about his some great literary works and notable works. It tells of the macabre that first appeared in the early 1830s, and his poetry were more influential in France than at home. So that's it for today. In our upcoming video, we will try to know about Victorian literature. It began in 1837 and it ended in 1901.